Good morning, my name is Douglas Kidd and welcome back to my vlog for Crimes of the Powerful for week 6. This week's topic was policing white-collar crime. However, the focus predominantly shifted onto regulatory bodies and industry compliance. So what are regulatory bodies? Regulatory bodies are government authorities that regulate and apply legislation to industries, corporations, and individuals throughout Australia for civil or non-criminal offences. So this is where regulatory bodies fit into policing white-collar crime. So who are the regulatory bodies in Australia? Each state and territory in Australia actually have their own regulatory bodies. However, many of these state regulatory bodies are overseen by their federal counterparts. This week, I'm going to focus just on two regulatory bodies, federal regulatory bodies, the industry compliance sector, and how both of these police white-collar crime. The first is the Australian Securities and Investment Commission, or ASIC as it is known. According to the Australian Securities and Investment Commission 2019, ASIC regulates corporations, financial services, consumer credit, and markets throughout Australia. The next is the Australian Taxation Office. ATO 2017 states that the ATO's primary role is to effectively manage and shape the tax and superannuation systems to support and fund services for all Australians. The ATO is also responsible for administering and enforcing taxation law within Australia. Before I move on to industry compliance, I just want to focus briefly on enforceable undertakings. So enforceable undertakings are written agreements that can be entered into by individuals with the relevant regulatory body. The enforceable undertaking then binds the individual to comply with directions given by the regulatory body under the agreement. These undertakings can also be administered or overseen by relevant courts, such as the Federal Circuit Court of Australia. So for this week's example, I'm just going to take you to the Office of the Australian Commissioner for Information's website, just to show you what their definition of an enforceable undertaking by a federal regulatory body is. So just bear with me for a minute while I set up the screen share. So as you can see, the website talks about enforceable undertakings and it gives you a basic background of the legislative framework behind it. Alternatively, civil penalties such as fines or infringement notices are another option that can be administered or enforced by regulatory bodies. However, they have a lower requirement of proof within the balance of probabilities. Civil penalties can also come in the form of remuneration to victims of white-collar crime being enforced by the regulatory body. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about industry compliance. So this is a growing concept and actually a field of employment within many industries in Australia in the modern era. Industry compliance is where companies within regulated industries basically take it upon themselves to self-regulate as a means of ensuring compliance with the legislation that's pertinent to their industry. The hospitality industry is a great example of this, with some larger hospitality companies specifically employing compliance officers to ensure that their licensed venues comply with legislation such as the Liquor Act of 1992 here in Queensland. However, for smaller hospitality companies or venues, this role has been passed down onto the individual venue managers as well. So this brings me to the conclusion for this week. Thank you all very much for watching again, and I'll see you again next week.